What's going on, Legionnaires, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. If you're new to the channel, do me a favor and hit that sub button, hit that notification bell, and make sure you're not missing any of the awesome content we have coming out. Now, right now, I'm currently working on Eternals issues number 1 through 3. But I wanted to take a little bit of a break from that, and I wanted to cover this indie comic. Coming from Image Comics, created by SCOTT SNYDER, artwork by Tony Daniel, colors by Tomamori, and letterer and world design. And this comic is SCOTT SNYDER's Noctera issue number 1. Now, SCOTT SNYDER is dropping us into part 1 of Full Throttle Dark. And 10 years after the world is plunged into an everlasting night, the only way to survive is to stay close to artificial light. And so we follow Val Riggs, a skilled ferryman who transports people and goods along deadly unlit roads with a heavily illuminated 18-wheeler. You know, and for me personally, I really do think that this comic could end up being a TV series or a movie, because it reminds me a lot of the movie The Mist mixed with a little bit of Pitch Black, with some awesome twists to it, some sci-fi twists. But yeah, with that being said, let's dive into this issue. Alright, so this issue picks us up in Denver, Colorado, back before everything happened. And one of the most common questions that you get asked today is, where were you that morning? The morning the big PM hit. But the stories are almost always the same. Driving to work, and suddenly it happened. Or cleaning the dishes, and the darkness came. And this is where we meet our main character, Val, aka Sundog, is her call sign that she uses over the CB. And her story of that morning is a little bit different. In total, it took 23 minutes for the sky to go dark. And when it had started, she was working on a picture of her family, of her adopted parents, Miguel and Catherine, and her adopted brother, Amori. Now for Val, she had spent a good majority of her childhood essentially legally blind, suffering from a condition that was only reversible through a surgery that the orphanage she was living in couldn't afford. And the worst thing for her about that darkness is it wasn't complete. She could still see glimpses of light, maybe even an image if she moved very quickly, but it was always a fleeting, until the spots returned and covered everything back to darkness. And she came to think of that darkness as dirty fingers blotting out the world, cruel and greedy, ruining everything they touched. But when she was adopted, she had the surgery right before her 5th birthday, and when she woke up, she was able to see again, and her adoptive parents welcomed her to the real world. And this is where we see the family making their way out of here, because everyone's scared right now. No one knows really what is going on. All they know is the sun is being blotted out, and not even the stars are visible anymore. But the thing about Val is this is the story that she tells people. She lets people know that she was in the back seat of her family's car, arguing with her brother over a crayon sun. But that's not really where she was. And then we pick up in present day, and the year is 13 PM, which means it has been 13 years since the darkness has come. And we pick up 10 miles east of Luxville, Colorado outpost. And we have Val making her way down a dark and dangerous highway. And they know something is out there, something getting ready to circle. And she's on comms with her brother Amori, who she refers to as M. And he's letting her know that it's probably nothing more than just bugbird-sized shades. Now, shades is what they're calling these monsters that come out of the darkness. Now, this is a little worrisome for her, so she goes ahead and arms up and turns on every one of her lights. And she goes over the comms and lets everybody know that she is transporting, that they've got shades ahead, and it could be big ones, but that she's done this trip 1,000 times and she promises that everyone's gonna make it home safely. Just stay lit and sit. And this is when Val gets visuals, and we start to see little shades popping up all over the windshield, getting smacked and splattered. But this is when they see something big, and whatever it is closing fast. And so she blares all the lights she has, and it lights up like a Christmas tree. And the people in the back, they can hear shades just knocking off the sides, and one of them freaks out, just just says she can't do it. She's got to get out of here, which personally, you know, if I were in the back with her, I would have just knocked her out, apologized afterwards, because you're literally gonna risk everybody because of your panic. And this is where she panics and runs over to the emergency door and clicks the button and opens the back hatch open. And this is where we see a shade grab her by the face and rip her out of the truck. Now, these shades aren't some kind of alien or monster that just comes from the mist. You know, wherever you were on the first day of the big PM, by the second day, you were someplace far, far worse. Because that's when everything started changing. Because in the big PM, any living organism left unlit in the dark for more than 10 hours at a time starts undergoing a biological transformation, changing into what they call now a shade, a monstrous version of itself. From insects to fish to birds, everything had transformed. And while we're getting this explanation, we also see Val making her way on top of the truck, putting the truck into an autopilot, and heading up and starts blasting at shades, taking them off one by one, trying to make her way to the back of the truck. Now, the infection, it starts in the gums and moves into the blood and the bones. If you catch it very early, dialysis could sometimes prevent this from happening. But if your gums have gone dark, you may be able to stop it with a solar lamp. But they're rare as gold these days. And if it gets past your gums, it's over. And human shades are the apex predator. They mix with nothing, live in packs, and have their own language. They bring down outposts whenever they feel like it. And if you see one of them, it's probably already too late. But it's so much more than that. More than the human ones, it's everything. Up until about 3 years in, you could really tell the difference on what was an animal or had been before changing. But now, at 13 years in, shades have mated with shades and had made new species. Shade plants have pollinated, and so it's creating a whole new ecosystem, blooming and growing, and there is no longer room for humans. And getting inside the back of this truck, she runs into one of these giant shades, and her and this shade battle it out, only for her to get knocked out of the vehicle with the shade, sitting here as this thing is standing, only getting bigger and bigger as it comes into view. And M is letting her know that there are more right behind her. And so she knocks her flares. And this is when we see the outpost wall. And it shines brighter than the sun itself. And it pushes back all of the shades. Long enough for Val to be able to make it inside. Now, most cities, they'd fallen within the first few weeks. But this place had survived because it was much smaller. You know, smaller towns, villages, even neighborhoods that could stay lit in the dark using hydro, wind, generators, whatever it may be, even fire. These became outposts. And you have rumors of sanctuaries built by the rich, bunkers hidden with solar simulators, but according to Val, it's all BS. And the outposts are the last safe haven for humanity. Now, this place, for over 100 years, the town manufactured none other than light bulbs. So just before the big PM hit, they were having a month-long celebration of their centennial legacy. And so LED lights had been strung across buildings, searchlights in the sky, you name it, they had it. And so this was literally the brightest town in the Rockies. And now it's become a hub for ferrymen like Val. Now, ferrymen are just drivers. They haul whoever pays and they go from outpost to outpost. A bunch of ragtag individuals, if you will. Now, Val's going in to get paid and she goes to what they call the truck stop. And this is where they get all their routes. And Val asks if there's anything left for her, but there's not. And they've just gotten word that Tipton has gone dark and that nobody's heard from them since. And she lets Val know, like, she heard the screams. And Cola saw the wall go down. And so for payment for this route, she takes what is considered a charge. I'm not really sure what this battery pack is for, but it seems to have some kind of importance. And that's who Bellwether is. Bellwether is the person that gives everybody the routes and kind of distributes the funds as they're earned. At least for Lightbulb. And so she heads off. And as she's heading off, two of the individuals that were in the back of her truck, an old man and a young girl. They ask if they can get a ride. Though they can't pay in advance, they can pay when they get there. And she tells them that she doesn't drive for charity and that they need to have the money up front and not just a ferry for them, but also a ferry for an entire load, because she doesn't just take two people. It's going to be worth her time. So unless they can afford to pay for every seat, she's not going to do it. And this is when the old man shows her a sunburn. And Val's response is, alright, so I'm supposed to believe that that's a real sunburn from what, like a sanctuary? Besides, north of the divide, there are human hives everywhere. But they insist that the location is real and that he was just there 3 days ago. And she says hard pass, and then takes off to go find her brother Amori. And she sees him in an extremely lit kind of laboratory, kind of a inventor's haven. And he's been sitting here working on devices to help her while she's out and about. And this is when she lets Amori know that they need to talk, because people saw him sneak out of the outpost. And he says that they saw wrong, and that he made a mistake and he's fine. And so she says, show me. And she forces her way into looking at his gums, only to see the blackness is starting to take them over. And so the dialysis has not been working, and that's the battery pack that she had gotten. She had charged the dialysis battery to be able to help her brother. And the only lamp that they knew of was in Tipton, and Tipton's gone dark. And so she tells him to get on the table. Like, get on the table and start doing your dialysis right now. And so her brother starts going through dialysis. And she tells us a little bit more information about her. She lets us know, the truth is when the big PM hit, as things went dark for everyone else, she was back in the moment when for her, everything had first gone bright. That moment years ago, right after the surgery, when her eyes had been unwrapped and opened, and she was welcomed to the real world, she cried. But not because she was happy, because that bright world, it looked fake to her. Paper thin. Because some part of her knew that the real world was the one back in the darkness. Dangerous and vicious. And it was only a matter of time before those long, dirty fingers came back to snub out all of the light. That's where she was. At 23 minutes in, when she saw the sky turn black, she was thinking, it followed you, and it's back for real this time. And the only thing that mattered to her from that point forward was taking care of her brother. Now, after doing some thinking and sending off one of these lanterns as a kind of tribute to everybody that died in Tipton, she goes to the house of this old man and the young girl. And she lets them know that she's gonna do this job, but if the money isn't right upon arrival, she's gonna kill both of them without hesitation. And he introduces his name as Augustus, and the granddaughter is Bailey. And so we see them load up into the truck. 618 miles of dark road ahead. Amori on the verge of turning into one of these shades. A horrendous journey is ahead of them. And she lets us know, like, realistically, if she had known what she knew now, she would have never laid her foot on that gas. And this is where we pick back up at the truck stop. And we see a shadowy figure make his way inside. Something of a carbon nanotubes, kind of bonded with it. And he comes in here asking for Val, asking where that truck just went. And Bellwether's just like, yeah, I don't give out that information, and closes up shop. And then he lets everybody know that his call sign is Blacktop Bill. But he's not here for Val. He actually has no problem with Val. But he has a problem with the old man in her truck. Because he is the one who killed the son. And it's his agenda to hunt him down. And that will be the end of this issue. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Honestly, I think this was so much fun. It was new, it was original, and it was definitely something that we don't see. How do you make truck driving cool? Scott Snyder's figured it out. Like, this is exactly what you want out of a comic book. And it's so nice to break the monotony of everything that we've been getting. Like, they wanted it to feel a little superhero-like, but at the same time, they wanted it to feel different. And that's exactly what they did. They hit the nail on the freaking head. So yeah, all in all, I have to say, I am super excited about this comic, about this line, about the series. I am really looking forward to issue number 2. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you have not yet, please do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and until the next issue.